Once upon a time, there was a beautiful porcelain doll named Annabelle. She had been handmade by a skilled craftsman and was the pride and joy of her owner, a little girl named Emily. Emily loved Annabelle more than anything in the world and would spend hours playing with her, taking her on adventures and sharing her secrets with her. But one night, something strange happened. Emily woke up to find Annabelle sitting on her nightstand, staring at her with her glassy eyes. Emily thought it was strange, but she brushed it off and went back to sleep. The next morning, however, Emily woke up to find that Annabelle had moved again. This time she was on the floor, a few feet away from where she had been the night before. Emily started to get scared. She couldn't understand how Annabelle was moving on her own. She tried to tell her parents, but they didn't believe her. They thought she was just imagining things. But Emily knew that something was wrong with Annabelle. As the days went by, Annabelle's movements became more and more frequent. Emily would wake up in the middle of the night to find Annabelle sitting on her bed or in the corner of her room. And every time she saw Annabelle, she felt a cold chill run down her spine. One night, Emily woke up to find Annabelle sitting at the foot of her bed. But this time, something was different. Annabelle's eyes seemed to be glowing, and her porcelain skin looked almost translucent. Emily was terrified. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Suddenly, Annabelle lunged at Emily. Emily tried to fight her off, but Annabelle was too strong. She held Emily down with her tiny porcelain hands and whispered in her ear, "I will never let you go." Emily's parents heard her screaming and rushed into the room. When they turned on the lights, they found Emily lying on the floor, unconscious. Annabelle was sitting next to her, looking as innocent as ever. From that day on, Emily was never the same. She would have nightmares about Annabelle every night, and she refused to play with any dolls ever again. As for Annabelle, she remained in Emily's room, always watching and waiting for her next victim to come along. She was a hunted doll, cursed to haunt anyone who dared to cross her path.
Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the heart of a dense forest, there lived a witch named Morgana. She was feared and hated by the villagers, who believed that she was responsible for all the misfortunes that had befallen them. One day, a group of brave villagers decided to confront Morgana and demand that she lift the curse that had been placed upon their village. But when they arrived at her cottage, they found her sitting in front of a large mirror, muttering strange incantations. The villagers demanded that Morgana lift the curse, but she only laughed and told them that it was too late. The curse had already taken hold, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. As they turned to leave, one of the villagers accidentally knocked over the mirror. To their horror, they saw that the mirror was possessed by an evil spirit that had been feeding off of Morgana's dark magic. The spirit emerged from the mirror and began to wreak havoc on the village, causing crops to wither and die, animals to fall ill, and people to become sick and weak. Desperate to save their village, the villagers turned to a powerful wizard who lived in a nearby castle. The wizard agreed to help them, but warned them that breaking the curse would not be easy. Using his magic, the wizard was able to track down the source of the curse, a powerful talisman that Morgana had hidden deep within the forest. With the help of the villagers, he was able to retrieve the talisman and destroy it, breaking the curse once and for all. Morgana was never seen again, but the villagers knew that her curse had left a lasting mark on their community. They vowed to never forget the lessons they had learned from their encounter with Morgana and her possessed mirror. It was a typical Monday morning when the world changed forever. People were going about their daily routines, commuting to work, dropping their kids off at school, and grabbing their morning coffee. But then, without warning, the dead began to rise. At first, people thought it was a joke. They laughed as they saw people dressed up as zombies stumbling down the street. But soon, it became clear that this was no prank. The zombies were real, and they were hungry. The news spread quickly, and panic set in. People were running through the streets, screaming and trying to find a safe place to hide. But there was nowhere to go. The zombies were everywhere. As the day wore on, the situation grew more dire. The military was called in, but they were quickly overwhelmed. The zombies seemed unstoppable, and it looked like humanity was doomed. But there was one man who refused to give up. His name was Jack, and he was a former Marine. He had seen combat before, but nothing like this. He knew that he had to act fast if he wanted to survive. Jack gathered a group of survivors and led them through the streets, fighting off zombies at every turn. They made their way to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, where they barricaded themselves inside. For days they waited, listening to the sounds of the undead outside. But Jack refused to give up hope. He knew that they had to find a way to fight back. Finally, one day, they heard a radio broadcast from a group of scientists who claimed to have found a cure for the zombie virus. Jack and his team set out to find them, fighting their way through hordes of zombies along the way. When they finally reached the scientists, they were exhausted and battered. But they had done it. They had found a way to save humanity. The cure was distributed around the world, and slowly but surely, the zombie threat was eradicated. Jack and his team were hailed as heroes, and life returned to some semblance of normalcy. But Jack knew that they had been lucky. The zombie outbreak could have easily destroyed humanity. And he knew that they had to be prepared for anything, because in this new world, anything was possible. With us into the dark realm. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Tommy. Tommy was afraid of the dark, especially at night when he had to go to bed. Every night, he would check under his bed to make sure there was no monster lurking there. One night, as Tommy was about to fall asleep, he heard a strange noise coming from under his bed. It sounded like something was moving around down there. Tommy tried to ignore it, but the noise grew louder and more persistent. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared from under the bed. Tommy screamed and jumped out of bed, but before he could run away, a furry creature emerged from under the bed. It was a monster. Tommy was terrified, but the monster didn't seem to be interested in hurting him. Instead, the monster started to talk to Tommy. It told him that it had been living under his bed for a long time, and that it was lonely. The monster explained that it had always wanted to be friends with Tommy, but was too scared to reveal itself. Tommy was surprised to hear this. He had always thought that monsters were scary and dangerous. But as he listened to the monster's story, he realized that it wasn't so different from him. It was just looking for a friend. After talking for a while, Tommy and the monster became friends. They would spend hours chatting and playing games under the bed. Tommy's fear of the dark disappeared, and he looked forward to going to bed every night. Years went by, and Tommy grew up. He stopped believing in monsters, and eventually moved out of his childhood home. But he never forgot about the monster under the bed. Whenever he felt lonely or scared, he would think back to his old friend and smile. The end.
Once upon a time, there was a small village nestled in the heart of a dense forest. The villagers were simple folk who lived a peaceful life until a tragic incident took place. One day, a young child was playing near the river when she accidentally fell in and drowned. Her parents were devastated by the loss, and they couldn't bear to live in the same village anymore. The villagers were sympathetic towards the grieving parents, and they tried their best to comfort them. But the parents were inconsolable, and they left the village in search of solace. However, the child's spirit remained behind, unable to find peace even in death. As time passed, strange things began to happen in the village. People would hear eerie whispers in the night, and objects would move on their own. Some villagers even claimed to have seen the ghost of the little girl wandering around the village, seeking revenge for her untimely death. The villagers were terrified, and they didn't know what to do. They sought the help of a wise old sage who lived on the outskirts of the village. The sage listened to their plight and decided to help them. He went to the river where the child had drowned and performed a ritual to appease her spirit. He prayed for her soul to find peace and forgiveness. The ritual worked, and the ghost of the child disappeared forever. The villagers were relieved and grateful to the sage for his help. They went back to living their peaceful lives, but they never forgot the vengeful ghost child who had haunted them for so long. From that day on, they made sure to be extra careful near the river, and they always remembered to pray for the souls of those who had passed away. The village remained peaceful once again, and the spirit of the little girl finally found peace in the afterlife.
Once upon a time, there was a beautiful antique mirror that had been passed down through generations in a wealthy family. It was said to have been enchanted by a powerful witch who had cursed it with the ability to possess anyone who gazed into its reflection. The mirror had been kept locked away in a forgotten room of the family's mansion for years until one day, a young woman named Sarah stumbled upon it while exploring the house. As soon as she laid eyes on the mirror, she felt drawn to it, and without thinking, she reached out to touch its smooth surface. Suddenly, Sarah felt a strange sensation wash over her, and before she knew it, she was no longer in control of her own body. The mirror had possessed her, and she could feel its dark energy coursing through her veins. From that moment on, Sarah was no longer herself. She would spend hours staring into the mirror, lost in its twisted reflection, and she would become violent and unpredictable towards anyone who dared to approach her. The family soon realized that something was wrong with Sarah and sought out the help of a powerful psychic who specialized in exorcisms. The psychic arrived at the mansion and immediately sensed the presence of the cursed mirror. With the family's help, the psychic managed to break the mirror's curse and free Sarah from its possession. However, the mirror was destroyed in the process, and the family never spoke of it again. Years later, the mansion was sold to a new owner, and one day while renovating the forgotten room, they stumbled upon a small shard of glass that had once been part of the cursed mirror. As soon as they picked it up, they felt a strange sensation wash over them, and they knew that the curse of the possessed mirror was far from over. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Emily who loved dolls. She had a whole collection of them in her room, but her favorite was a Japanese doll named Akira. Akira had a porcelain face, black hair, and wore a traditional kimono. Emily loved to play with her every day. One night, Emily woke up to a strange noise in her room. She looked around and saw that Akira had moved from her usual spot on the shelf to the foot of her bed. Emily thought it was odd but brushed it off and went back to sleep. The next morning, Emily woke up to find her room in disarray. Her other dolls were scattered on the floor, and Akira was nowhere to be found. Emily searched her room but couldn't find her beloved doll. That's when she heard a faint giggle coming from under her bed. Emily cautiously peered under her bed and saw Akira staring back at her with an evil grin on her face. Emily was frightened and tried to grab Akira, but the doll suddenly came to life and attacked her. Akira had turned into a killer doll. Emily screamed for help, but no one came. She was trapped in her room with the killer doll. Akira chased Emily around the room, slashing at her with a tiny knife. Emily was terrified and didn't know what to do. Just when things seemed hopeless, Emily's cat jumped onto the bed and knocked over a vase, breaking it into pieces. The noise startled Akira, and she stopped in her tracks. Emily quickly grabbed the broken vase and used it to smash Akira into pieces. Emily was safe, but she never played with dolls again. She knew that some dolls could be dangerous, and she didn't want to take any chances. From that day forward, Emily slept with one eye open, always on guard for any other killer dolls that might be lurking in the shadows. Once upon a time, there was a small town that had a video store that had been in business for decades. It was known for having a vast collection of movies, including rare and hard-to-find titles. However, the store had one video that no one dared to rent, the cursed video. The store owner had found the cursed video in a box of old tapes at an estate sale. He had never seen it before and thought it would be a great addition to his collection. However, strange things started happening after he put it on the shelf. Customers who rented the cursed video would return it looking exhausted and haunted. Some even claimed that they couldn't stop watching it and that it had cursed them. The store owner didn't believe them at first, but as more and more customers came forward with the same story, he began to worry. One day, he decided to watch the cursed video himself to see what was causing the curse. As he watched, he felt a chill run down his spine. The video was filled with disturbing images and sounds that seemed to seep into his mind. He tried to turn off the video, but it wouldn't stop playing. He realized that he too had fallen victim to the curse. He knew he had to break the curse before it was too late. He gathered all the copies of the cursed video and burned them in a bonfire. As the flames consumed the videos, he could feel the curse lifting. The customers who had been cursed started to recover, and the store returned to normal. However, some say that if you listen closely on quiet nights, you can still hear faint whispers and see ghostly images from the cursed video lingering in the shadows. The store owner never forgot about the cursed video and made sure to warn others about its dangers. From then on, he only stocked movies that were safe for everyone to watch.